Hello everyone, this is Gene again, and I'm back with another video. This is the second video I'll be doing on Final Fantasy VII. This one is on Barrett, big bad gun arm Barrett. In particular, this is going to be both a ramble of my thoughts on Barrett as a character and a response of sorts to a Kotaku article written by one Miss Gita. I don't know if it's Gita or Gita. I'm going to go with Gita. One Gita Jackson, where she opines that Barrett's portrayal in Final Fantasy VII is somehow offensive to the African American community. Let's just say that Miss Jackson, I firmly disagree with you. First of all, I want to point out something. Oh, there's Barrett's gun arm. It's just so dark I thought that was his gun arm. There's his gun arm right there. But anyway, there's something that I think we should be pointed out immediately that Miss Barrett should have considered when she even wrote this article. She admits in the article that she's never played Final Fantasy VII. Now, while I do not consider somebody not playing a game, how do I put it? While I don't consider that to be necessarily or necessarily mean that you cannot talk about something, if you've never played the game, you're really coming at this from a disadvantaged position, because then you don't know everything about the game and you don't know everything about the characters, especially when your piece is critical of a particular character's portrayal in said game. Now, she acknowledges that her brother had the game, but that she was too young to play. There was fears of her messing up the game machine, which would have been a PS1 at the time. So I don't know. I'm assuming that that Miss Jackson's probably maybe 5 to 7 years younger than I am. Because when Final Fantasy VII came out in 1996, 1997, I would have been around 11, 12 years old, depending on what the actual release date was in America. So if there were concerns about her messing up the machine, I'm going to assume that she was probably around 5 to 7 years younger than I was at that age. So again, if I'm 10, 11, right, she's probably, no, sorry, I'm actually 11, 12, I should say. If I'm 11, 12, around that time, 1996, 1997, she would probably maybe be around 5 or 6, maybe between 4 and 6. Again, taking a rough guess, just on what she herself acknowledged. But anyway, she talks about how she never played the game and somehow, although the game's been around for 20 plus years, never got around to playing it. She also doesn't mention if she ever saw a playthrough, a live stream, right? If she ever saw cutscenes or anything. So I'm going to assume, I don't like to assume, but given that she does not mention even watching a playthrough at any point of Final Fantasy VII, I'm going to assume that she doesn't even have that. All she has are memories of not being allowed to play it by her family and by her older brother. And it seems that she never got around to doing any research, from what I can tell reading the article, on the game at any point, which to me is especially egregious. If you're going to talk about something, research it. You don't have to be an expert. You don't have to know every single solitary thing. Right, naturally, I, being someone who's actually played Final Fantasy VII, am going to have a deeper understanding of the game than someone who hasn't. But at least do your research, as Sherlock Holmes would say, or at least what's his name, Benedict Cumberbatch, right? His version of Sherlock Holmes would say, "Do your research." So, when you come at something from a place of ignorance, you really need to be respectful and acknowledge that. Which, in my opinion, outside of admitting that she didn't play the game, Miss Jackson never acknowledges the fact that she could be approaching this from a place of ignorance. And by ignorance, I simply mean a lack of knowledge. But she's going to write this she's going to write this article like she knows something. And that, again, as somebody who's played the game several times, grew up with it, that frustrates me. Because she accuses Barrett of being a Mr. T stereotype. And that just shows to me how ignorant she is of the character. Because Barrett, at least to me, well, yes, on the surface, he's this very alpha male, hyper-masculine character, which of course was very popular in the 1990s. Let's also keep that in mind. Barrett is a product of a video game that came out around 1996 and 1997. Media in Japan and in America and all over the world was very different at that time. Right? But still, he's a very hyper-masculine guy. Yes, there is a bit of a Mr. T element in the facial hair and all that, again, being hyper-masculine. But here's the thing about Barrett that I don't believe Miss Jackson is aware of. Barrett may look like a stereotype at first, right, being the hyper-masculine alpha male black character. But once you actually play the game, you realize that Barrett is not an example of toxic masculinity, despite looking big and scary. You find out that he's an example of classic masculinity. He's actually a deconstruction, right? At least to me, he is a deconstruction of the, hyper masculine, tough guy type of image that was prevalent in media in the 1990s, both in America and in Japan and in many other countries. Barrett's story throughout the game is the classic tragic warrior, right? And you learn that as you play the game, which again, Miss Jackson admits she never did, right? You learn that there's so much more to Barrett than just his appearance. Even in the beginning of the game, you find out that Barrett, for example, loves his teammates, right? He starts screaming in rage and agony when a raid goes wrong early in the game, and three characters, I believe it's Biggs, Wedge, and Jesse, end up dying in the raid. He screams and wails in agony. When the plate in the beginning of the game, it's like when you finally leave the slums, right? This plate falls down and you can't go back. This plate has effectively crushed everybody that was living there. Again, Barrett wails in pain. This is a man who fights for what he believes in, right? He starts out in a sense kind of like a bad guy, but he views himself as the revolutionary in the sense that he's an eco-terrorist. But he cares for the people that he works with. They aren't just pawns to him. He mourns their deaths. He's a war veteran, right? His life is just defined by pain and struggle and loss. And he has qualities such as leadership, right? Such as suffering in silence. Right? As the game shows later on, he lost one of his best friends, right? And he took in that man's daughter and raised her as his own. Marlene, although she is not Barrett's daughter by blood, she is Barrett's daughter by affection. And Barrett will do anything he has to protect her and to provide her with a safer world to live in. And he's very good friends with Tifa and various, other things, right? I could go on and on and on about Barrett. But the whole thing about Barrett is that he is a deconstruction, right? Once you get to play the game, you see that, behind this very rough and tough exterior is a man who, again, bleeds for his comrades, right? Who fights for what he believes in. Who's constantly suffering through loss and silence, and he presses on. He's actually mentally tougher than Cloud, because there comes a point when Cloud just mentally breaks. I mean, I remember this. Literally, Tifa has to push him around in a wheelchair because Cloud is mentally and physically broken. But Barrett isn't. Barrett's angry as hell because he's very emotional. But Cloud is broken, but Barrett is not. Right? That's another thing, right? Barrett, both in appearance and personality, is meant to contrast Cloud. Cloud is not overtly emotional. Barrett's very emotional. Cloud is very skinny. Barrett's very big, right? Cloud has spiky blonde hair. Barrett has short black hair, right? Cloud has light skin. Barrett has brown skin. Everything is meant to contrast each other. And yet what happens? They work together as a team. Right? The game demonstrates that these different people from different walks of life can come together, can have their issues, can have their differences, but can put them aside to save the world. That's pretty much what ends up happening at the end, although the ending takes place literally centuries after everything. But still, that to me is Barrett. To me, Barrett Wallace. Right? She couldn't even use his full name. To me, Barrett Wallace is like Saitama in a sense, just as the One Punch Man is a deconstruction of the overpowered Superman-esque hero who can hardly be defeated. Barrett is a deconstruction of the 1990s anti-hero, right? Of the guy who can, take on the world, but he dies inside as he does, right? He cries inside. Right, it's interesting. I was literally, as I was putting my laundry away, there was this ad. There was this ad on TV for the TV show Criminal Minds, and it was Shamar Moore talking about his character of Derek Morgan, and he mentions that Derek is an alpha male. Derek's an alpha male, right? But then, what was good about the character was the fact that once you got past, the alpha male elements about him, you peeled back the layers and you can get these vulnerabilities and these moving moments about him. To me, Barrett as a character is the same. Yes, on its face he looks big and bad and strong and impenetrable, but there are these elements, there are these vulnerabilities about him that you only find out if you play the game, or if you do your research, or if you watch a playthrough. In my opinion, Miss Jackson should have never written this without doing the proper research first, and she just further proved Sturgeon's point that he made in another video of mine about how gaming journalists today don't really care about gaming. But if you're going to write something, especially if it's going to be critical, actually know what you're talking about. She also criticizes keep in mind, the Japanese creators of this game for creating a stereotype of American Blackness. Honey, they get that stereotype from American media. Don't yell at them, yell at American media. I also believe that, from what I can see and from what I've read, and I am the type of person who will take into account what is said and what is not said. Miss Jackson, in my personal opinion, does not acknowledge the fact that black males are masculine, are alpha. That's what they like to be. That is their ideal. This is the ideal for many black men. You don't believe me? Look at One Punch Man. Look at Naruto. Look at Bleach. Look at One Piece. Look at Dragon Ball Z. Those are all shows that have a lot of black male viewers, right? You'll find plenty of channels on YouTube, right, where there'll be breakdowns of these various shows or episode reviews or character pieces or whatnot, and a good chunk of the time, it's a black guy. Not all the time, naturally, because anime and good storytelling has a universal appeal, but many of the videos I encounter that, again, are covering shows like that, these, very macho, masculine shonen shows, oftentimes it's black guys. Hell, a good example, although it's not quite common, I guess you could say, is Jack's Blade, right? The anime fitness guy. You look at all of the animes that he lists, they all tend to feature, or at least almost all of them, I should say, tend to feature very masculine characters. In fact, he himself admits that Goku is his favorite hero. Goku as a character is very, very masculine. I can tell you that a friend of mine, a man named Nathaniel. His two favorite heroes that he has modeled himself after, right, are Superman and Goku. Again, very, very masculine characters. And Nate might as well be Black Superman. I'm dead serious. Dude's like 6'4". He's built like a tank. He's even styled his hair like Superman. Black males like to be masculine for the most part. Does that apply for every single black guy? Of course not. But for the most part, especially in African American culture, yes, masculinity is in. Masculinity is what is desired and is idealized and what is expected. And the fact that Miss Jackson does not acknowledge the fact that black men like masculinity and are attracted to masculine characters, and again, idealize it. Look at, for example, black actors. Most black actors that you see in media, right, play masculine roles. Not every single time, but the majority of them play masculine roles. Let me rattle off some names. Wesley Snipes, Michael Jai White, Denzel Washington, Will Smith, right? The Rock, even Kevin Hart to a degree, although he's a comedian, right? Who else? Martin Lawrence, right? Remember, he was in Bad Boys, right? I could go on and on and on and on. Masculinity is very much an important part of the black male identity. Speaking as someone who knows a lot of black men, this seems to be a common trait, at least from what I can tell. So the fact that she does not acknowledge this, that Miss Jackson does not acknowledge this in her little opinion piece, is quite telling. What I also find quite telling is how she ends her opinion piece. She ends it with one word, right? Hallelujah, which of course is short for hallelujah. More importantly, though, hallelujah is a phrase you often hear in drag culture, which of course, objectively speaking, would be the antithesis of the alpha male culture found in black male culture, right? It's the very opposite of that alpha masculine male ideal for black men. Now, again, this is just my opinion, and I mean no disrespect. But I do hope that Miss Jackson does understand that RuPaul is not the standard for black men. Most black men are not trying to be RuPaul. Even black gay men are not trying to be RuPaul. Again, no disrespect to RuPaul. I have nothing against him. I certainly wouldn't try to cross him. That boy can fight. Just because he wears a dress does not mean he can't fight. But again, RuPaul is not the masculine ideal. Barrett is. Barrett is closer to how black men, collectively speaking, from what I've seen, see themselves than RuPaul is. So, in closing, yes. I believe that if Miss Jackson wants to write another opinion piece about a video game she's never played and presumably hasn't even done a watch through of, right? Watched a playthrough or anything of that sort, hasn't done any research. Perhaps she should do her research before she opines about something she doesn't understand. Barrett may look like a stereotype, but once you peel back the layers, you realize that he's this beautiful, tragic character, and he's this beautiful expression of classic masculinity. He's not toxic, he's classic. The character is a hero. And, how do I put this? If she can't see that, then, I pity her. I pity the fool who doesn't realize that Barrett Wallace is a strong black man. That's my imitation of a dude's voice and of Mr. T. So let me know what you think. If you agree with what I said, disagree, think I'm nuts, Let me know. Have a good night, everybody. Bye.